And big story coming up from the national capital. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has spoken to the Russian President Vladimir Putin. Remember, just earlier today, the Ukrainian ambassador to the national capital, to India, he had urged Prime Minister Narendra Modi to speak to the Russian president and help bring about a resolution in this crisis. He had said that the Russian President Vladimir Putin, whether he speaks to any other world leader or not, whether he listens to any other world leader or not, the stature of Prime Minister Narendra Modi was such, and the personal friendship between the two, he hoped that Prime Minister Narendra Modi would intervene, speak to the Russian president, so that democracy, one democracy, comes to the aid of another democracy. I quickly want to cut across to India Today's Foreign Affairs editor, Geeta Mohan, for more on this. Geeta, you were the first to break the story that Prime Minister Narendra Modi would be speaking to the Russian President Vladimir Putin later this evening. Bring us details of the conversation that the two had.
Well, a very important, specific conversation on the issue of the situation in Ukraine. Prime Minister Narendra Modi was briefed. The statement that we have in front of us, Gaurav, says that the Prime Minister was briefed by President Putin on the recent developments in Ukraine. Prime Minister Modi said that the long-standing differences between Russia and NATO have to be resolved through sincere dialogue, and there is no other way, which means India again reiterating that while legitimate interests of all parties need to be secured, it can only be done through dialogue. Prime Minister Narendra Modi also emphasized the concerns India has with regards to Indian nationals now stranded in Ukraine. The appeal was quite clear that there needs to be absolute cessation of violence, and the leaders agreed that there needs to be contact at the highest level, diplomatic level, to maintain regular contact in all these topics of interest. So all matters to do with the crisis and the situation were discussed. But in terms of the way forward, we do know that the Ukrainian ambassador today, Gaurav, in a briefing asked intervention by the Indian Premier, saying that India does hold sway, is an important partner, is a strategic partner of Russia, and therefore should be able to convince the Russian president. But over here we see the conversation was two-sided, where the Russian president also put forth the situation and where Russia stands. So we will wait for a detailed briefing on what really transpired and whether there's going to be any shift. For now, that doesn't seem like it, but it just seems like two partners who spoke about what their stand is and what their concerns are.
Russia is a special privileged partner, a privileged strategic partnership that India and Russia enjoy. Is there a roadmap, Geeta, just as yet? The 20,000 Indian students stranded in various cities and provinces across Ukraine, how do you get them out now that the airspace is closed? Is there a roadmap on how to get them to the nearest border by land, and when, considering still bombs are flying and the situation is extremely tense in Ukraine?
Well, a very pertinent area where the Indian administration is looking at all aspects when it comes to evacuation or getting Indian nationals out. Gaurav, you're on the ground. We know that the major crisis is in the border towns, because on the eastern side of Ukraine to the west of Russia, because that's where all the problem right now is concentrated. We know that there are a lot of Indian students on the western side of Ukraine, in Lviv, and so on and so forth, but they're also quite tense, but they have options. Now, what is Indian administration doing? One, they've opened up a situation room. That's a 24/7 situation room where they're looking at all the calls, requests that are coming in, if there's anyone who's stranded or is in trouble. Secondly, the Indian embassy and the ambassador himself addressed people on the ground in Ukraine. Thirdly, the Indian embassy in Ukraine and the Ministry of External Affairs here in New Delhi now are coordinating with all the Indian embassies in the neighboring countries. That's Poland, Romania, Moldova, Hungary, Slovakia. All these countries and the Indian embassies there are now working to see whether if there can be any border evacuation rather than a flight evacuation, given that Ukraine, as of today, is a no-fly zone. So we are looking at how to mobilize, move them. The onus most probably for the Indian nationals will be to reach certain places, but for now they've been advised to stay where they are, stay put, look at the nearest bunkers, know where to go when they need to be safe, and wait for instructions on where to and how to leave Ukraine.
Oh, absolutely. The situation at this point of time is extremely tense and precarious. And for all Indians who are watching this broadcast, their relatives in Ukraine, very important, stay where you are. It is a very uncertain environment at this point of time. Get to the nearest bunker as soon as it's possible. Should you hear bombs flying overhead, stay put where you are. That's the safest. The airspace is closed. Trains, roads of course are jam-packed, we are told, with those who can afford to get out of these big places, whether it's Mariupol or Kiev. They want to get out of these places and get to safer areas. So the advice for Indians is to stay put where they are. As far as Russia is concerned, there is a lot of pressure on India to weigh in on either side, Geeta. Would that be wise at this stage, considering Russia is a special privileged partner, United States is extremely close, so is Ukraine, or is India's policy to wait and watch and not take sides just as yet?
Well, not take sides just as yet, because the situation is fluid. Look at the stand that NATO has taken. There has been no retaliation of sorts, so to say, to contain Russia. When Russia declared Donetsk and Luhansk as independent republics, it was Putin trying to weigh what the West could do. There was no reaction apart from the economic sanctions, and that too not on swift transactions, which is key to the gas supply from Russia to Europe. So the economic sanctions are not enough, because if that is the case, Gaurav, you think Russia would have taken such a huge step without factoring in economic sanctions? They've suffered it in 2014. And therefore, Russia is only looking at her interests when it comes to ensuring Ukraine does not join NATO. Prime Minister Narendra Modi in his conversation said the very same thing, that there is a problem, a historical problem, when it comes to NATO and Russia, and it has to be resolved through dialogue. It cannot be by force, and Ukraine cannot be the victim of the fight between the West and Russia. And that's what India is emphasizing, that if there is a problem, there cannot be a third country that can be held to ransom, and that's what's really happening over here. So while India is concerned about the situation of Ukraine and the people of Ukraine, India certainly at this point in time, at this juncture, is not going to take sides. We'll wait and see if things blow up. If there is human casualty,
and it
then
takes
maybe
two to
there is
tango.
going to be.
You're absolutely right. It's absolutely okay, and Geeta Mohan will be tracking that story. Geeta Mohan has been breaking every story on this big development that's been taking place for the moment. Geeta, many thanks for joining me. A quick break. Our coverage from ground zero in western Ukraine continues. Stay with us.